The internet has always been a place of growth and innovation. Those in control of what we have access to on the internet have consistently treated that access with equality and without discrimination. Any information on the internet is as readily available as any other information. Network neutrality has been one of the driving forces in what makes the internet the incredibly powerful tool that it is today. But what exactly is net neutrality? And why has it become so relevant in recent years? The term net neutrality was coined by Columbia University media law professor Tim Wu in 2003, who used it to define the network design principle. The network design principle states that the most useful public information treats all content, sites, and platforms equally. As John Pavlik and Sean McIntosh defined it in their book, Converging Media, net neutrality is the belief that the internet should not discriminate among the types of content that passes through it. Simply put, network neutrality is the idea that any network traffic can move from one place to another without discrimination. In recent years, net neutrality has become more prevalent in the public eye, and debate has sprung up over how the government should proceed with regulating the internet. To fully understand net neutrality, it helps to first understand how the internet works. First and foremost is the distinction of what the internet actually is. Most people use the word internet to mean going online. Really, the internet is just the basic computer network, made up of all the computers in the world, most of which are linked through telephone lines. More often than not, people who use the term internet actually are referring to the World Wide Web, which is an application through which everything on the internet can be accessed. The internet has one simple job, and that's to move digital information, or data, from one place to another. The method by which most information on the internet travels is called packet switching. The process of sending an email does a good job at showing how the internet moves data. When you type out an email and hit send, the contents of that email do not travel together. Instead, the data is broken down into smaller pieces called packets. These packets travel through any number of routes, all with the same destination, and once they arrive, they come together to assemble an email again. One other key point to understanding how the internet works is in the way that computers are able to access the World Wide Web. Computers connect through cables that lead to servers, which are machines that store information. For the most part, servers are operated by internet service providers, such as AT&T, Comcast, and Verizon. People pay internet service providers to gain access to their servers. Once they do, their computers are able to connect to them, acting as clients. While other methods of information sharing are sometimes used, by and large, internet service providers control the way that the internet and the World Wide Web are accessed. As with any debate, when it comes to net neutrality, there are generally two schools of thought, those for it and those opposed to it. Proponents of net neutrality believe that a non-neutral internet would allow internet service providers to affect what people see and do online, as well as stifle free speech and create a further centralized power for media corporations to use. Neutrality supporters also claim a lack of neutrality would lead to a lack of innovation, claiming that startups would never be able to grow since the cost of faster loading times would be too heavy for them to afford. Supporters of net neutrality would argue that companies such as Facebook, which started as a small college social media platform, would have an incredibly hard time growing without a neutral internet. Arguments against net neutrality vary in their origins. Companies such as AT&T and Verizon argue that a neutral internet would ultimately slow economic growth and innovation. With a neutral internet, companies that would potentially expand their broadband services will most likely choose not to, since they have no way of knowing whether or not their investments will be repaid. They also argue that the internet is already an unbalanced place as a result of large companies like Google having an advantage over smaller companies through their ability to pay for more servers and higher bandwidth services. Potentially increased taxes and overuse of bandwidth are also reasons against net neutrality, but the reasons already explained here are definitely the most cited. To a lesser extent, civil groups are among those opposed to net neutrality. They argue that federal internet policies are unnecessary and that the internet should not be under government regulation. However, arguments against net neutrality are typically made by large companies. Now for some history on the debate itself. In 2004, the Federal Communications Commission highlighted their principles of network freedom. These freedoms included freedom to access content, freedom to run applications, freedom to attach devices, and freedom to obtain service plan information. Fast forward 6 years later, in December of 2010, the FCC approved the Open Internet Order, which said that cable television and telephone providers were banned from preventing access to competitors or certain websites. Things were looking pretty good for net neutrality. Unfortunately, just a month later, in January 2011, Verizon sued the FCC on the grounds that the Open Internet Order exceeded the FCC's authority. They also said that the order violated the company's constitutional rights and created uncertainty in the communications industry. The U.S. Court of Appeals ruled that since broadband providers had been classified as information services rather than telecommunications services, they could not be regulated as common carriers, which made the Open Internet Order inapplicable to broadband providers. While the court did rule in favor of Verizon, they agreed with the FCC that if broadband providers were left unregulated, they could damage internet openness and hinder its development. They decided that if the FCC reclassified internet providers as telecommunications services, the Open Internet Order could be reinstated in its entirety. In April 2014, the FCC finally reported a new draft rule that posed two options. The first option was to reclassify broadband internet service as a telecommunications service and its providers as common carriers. This option was in direct response to the court ruling from before. The second option was to maintain broadband providers' classification as information services and additionally allow them to offer content providers faster connection speeds at a higher price. This option was directly against net neutrality, whereas the other was for it. The public backlash at this proposal was enormous. From social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter to content platforms like YouTube. The importance of the FCC's decision for the future of the internet was widespread. On September 10, 2014, dubbed Internet Slowdown Day, sites like Netflix, Reddit, and Twitter intentionally slowed down their connection speeds to show what the potential effects of a non-neutral internet could be. The FCC opened up a period of public comment on the issue, and during its first day, more than 1 million responses were received. That's larger than any response the FCC has ever seen. Over the course of the period, nearly 4 million unique comments were made regarding the issue of net neutrality. President Barack Obama even called on the FCC to take up the strongest possible rules protecting net neutrality, a view which he held consistently throughout his political career.
That's why I'm laying out a plan to keep the internet free and open. And that's why I'm urging the Federal Communications Commission to do everything they can to protect net neutrality for everyone.
On February 26, 2015, the FCC voted to reclassify internet providers as common carriers, meaning that they are now under the jurisdiction of the Open Internet Order. Thankfully, net neutrality is assured, at least for the foreseeable future. There will always be those companies that want a non-neutral internet, and they will undoubtedly continue to press for legislation that would reverse on the FCC's decision. The importance of an open and free internet is one that we can only truly understand if it's lost. It's crucial now more than ever to stay up to date on issues. They affect us in ways that we far too often realize only because it's too late to change them. Our ability to stay educated and connected is maintained only with the continuing success of network neutrality. Thank you for watching.